I am not what men say I am. I am not an angel. I am not a devil. I am not God. I am Memnoch, and I have come for you, and you will hear my tale.
Hello everyone, and welcome to The Life of Lestat De Lioncourt, Part 3, where I cover Lestat's involvement in the 5th installment of Anne Rices Vampire Chronicles book series, Memnoch the Devil. Now, I've already covered books 1 to 4, which is split into 2 videos, Part 1 and Part 2. You can check those out first if you've not seen them before coming back to this video. Now, I'll link the 2 videos down below. When I complete Lestat's entire life, I'll compile it into one big super YouTube movie for you all to watch, but obviously that is some time away. Anyway, we're going to talk about Memnoch the Devil. Now, this book really takes us in a different direction, and I have to admit that it's one of my least favourite books from the Vampire Chronicles, as it's quite heavily religious based in relation to the heavy vampire based stuff from Anne's previous books. But in saying that, by the end of the Tale of the Body Thief, it's kinda like, well, where does Anne go from here? What's next? Anyway, let's get into the story. So, Lestat is currently experiencing an existential crisis and is feeling exactly how he did before he buried himself the last time round, just before the events of the vampire Lestat. It's pretty clear that for all his charisma, personality and overall power, he's struggling with the will to continue living in the current world climate. He grapples with a sense of emptiness and a longing for purpose. He contemplates the monotony of his existence, wrestling with questions about the meaning of life. He feels as if he's seen everything that human life has to offer and that vampire life has to offer also. He wants more, but he doesn't know what that more is and how to get it. I was so sick of life and my own existence that I couldn't stand to see another nightfall. He recounts the beginning of his existence to entice the reader to continue to invest in what he has to say, but due to his overwhelming longing for a purpose, it inadvertently opens an invitation to something a lot bigger, almost like his desperation to find more makes him stand out to the individual he's about to meet. Lestat can feel a presence looming over him, but he doesn't know what. He's never felt anything like it. He keeps seeing a dark figure and he summons David Talbot to him in order to air his concerns. After reminiscing briefly, Lestat explains that he has summoned David because he thinks he's being stalked by the devil and he is afraid. Lestat tells David that he has been hunting a drug dealer and an art smuggler who he refers to as the victim. The victim is currently having dinner with his daughter Dora, who is a religious figure on television. While conversing with David, Lestat also eavesdrops on the victim's conversation with his daughter, during which the victim attempts to present Dora with a gift that she refuses to accept. David suggests that the stalker's appearance may be related to Lestat's current victim, especially as Dora is a religious figure, but Lestat maintains that the two events are separated since the presence first appeared before he began his hunt. In order to comfort his friend, David promises to stay in New York and procure suitable accommodations. David worries when Lestat requests that the accommodations contain a view of St. Patrick's Cathedral. Lestat pursues the victim to his secret house filled with his stolen treasures, and in reading the man's mind, Lestat finds that the man laments Dora's refusal of his gift, a sacred religious artifact, as are most of the victim's relics. Lestat arrives at the house before the victim and is startled by a huge black granite statue which resembles Lestat's image of his stalker. He avoids the statue when the victim arrives. The victim seems aware that someone has been in his home as he passes the rooms Lestat had not entered and lingers in the ones that Lestat thoroughly inspected. After drinking from the victim, Lestat empties the victim's pockets, cuts off his head and hands and places the pieces in 3 separate bags as he saw the victim do to Dora's mother when reading his mind. Lestat disposes of the body by burying it in separate places around New York City amongst rubbish. He finds the act deplorable but appropriate since he was the man's killer. Happening across a small church, Lestat notices the absence of the stalker's presence. He is now sure that the stalker is not related to the victim, at least not as a protector, but he knows that the stalker will return, which he sees as another reason to avoid Dora, as he can't help but link the two together. After entering a bar and washing his hands, Lestat notices a man sitting at the end of the bar laughing at him. When the man addresses him, Lestat recognizes the victim, Roger. Lestat is initially terrified at what he's just seen, but it doesn't take the turn that many of us would probably expect. After confirming that Lestat has no intentions of killing Dora, Roger asks his killer to watch over her and her treasures because he worries what will happen when people realize that the religious leader is the daughter of a smuggler and killer. Talking of Roger's life and who he was before Lestat killed him, Roger asks Lestat to also help Dora, since it's not fair for her to have had him for a father, and Lestat agrees to help her. Roger tells Lestat about his life, how he became the smuggler and killer he was. He highlights the events that led him down the path he walked, and Lestat begins to resonate with him and feeling sorry for the circumstances that affected Roger's life. He wishes he gave him the opportunity to talk to him, but was set on killing him as he already labelled him an evildoer. Roger, however, has accepted his fate. Lestat laments that it is too late to make Roger a vampire and wonders if Roger can stay with him as a ghost, but Roger says they are coming for him, followed by Lestat hearing the footsteps of the stalker. Hearing roaring voices and seeing the face of the statue, Lestat begs them to leave Roger alone, as he wonders if the stalker has been pursuing him because of Roger alone, wanting Lestat to end the man's life. Lestat actually grieves when he loses Roger and drifts into a mortal sleep to escape the pain of losing someone he attached to so quickly. This could be considered one of Lestat's biggest weaknesses. He attaches to people too quick. He wanted Louis before he even knew him. He fixates himself on having a companion to give him purpose, and it's quite alarming how quickly he went from loathing Roger when killing him to actually grieving him when he departed as a ghost. When he wakes, he wants to find Dora and tell her what he has done, but it is nearly sunrise and he must now take his immortal sleep. Just as he is about to rest, an ordinary man in the corner of the room appears and tells him it's not so simple. Lestat jumps up, flips the bed, and is burned by the sunlight before fading into sleep. As Lestat and David discuss the events of the previous evening, Lestat paces the floor of the Olympic Tower, stopping occasionally to peer at St. Patrick's Cathedral. He is eager to help Dora secure her fortune and convinces David to go to the treasure house with him because he is terrified of facing the statue, though he is eager to complete his task. Fear overwhelms Lestat as he enters Roger's flat, and he is convinced that he is going to hell when David tells him there is no black granite statue. He acknowledges to himself that the statue must have been the devil. Admiring David, Lestat believes that it is due to the amount of blood he gave him rather than its strength. David invites Lestat to watch him hunt for the first time, and after drinking from a crazed drug addict, David feels that he will not survive, but Lestat assures him that it is just a residual feeling from the young man. When Lestat notes David's despair, the two vampires focus their attention on Dora and what they should tell her as they travel to New Orleans. David believes that Lestat is imagining the stalker because punishing himself is the only way he knows to have fun. When they arrive at the townhouse Lestat once shared with Louis and Claudia, he is relieved that Louis is not there. He visits Dora with the intent only to watch her, but he enters her convent and ascends the stairs to the chapel. As Lestat admires the cross, the ordinary man enters with a proposition which he is unsure whether he should make before or after Lestat gets mixed up with Dora. Lestat has an epiphany that the stalker, the ordinary man, and the statue are all the same person. The ordinary man states that he will allow Lestat to finish his business with Dora, but soon they will discuss Lestat's soul. He advises Lestat that Dora will be a distraction that he should just simply leave alone. When the ordinary man leaves, Dora enters and heads towards her room, but then she stops and enters the chapel. Lestat and Dora look at each other for a moment, but he disappears, bolting for the attic. Dora follows and finds him. She knows that her father is dead, but asks Lestat why he has come to tell her. She acknowledges that Lestat is not human, though she is unsure whether he is good or evil. Lestat explains that he has come to watch over Dora, and when she compares him to a frightened elf, he says that the circumstances frighten him, not her. When she asks why, Lestat tells Dora that he is a vampire. Dora cries for her father, though she claims that she knew she would never see him again. Lestat carries her to her room and watches as she cries. He is distracted by the smell of her blood, but Dora is unafraid of Lestat. Marvelling at her lack of panic, Lestat reminds himself that he cannot fall in love with her. When Dora begins to pray, Lestat prays with her. He tells her how he became a vampire and that he thought that being a vampire made him evil, but she claims he must have a place in the scheme of things. When Lestat hears the stalker's approach, he leaves Dora, telling her to call upon him if she ever needs him. He flees for the townhouse where he finds the ordinary man laughing at his bravado. The ordinary man introduces himself as Memnoch the Devil and states that he has come to make a bargain. Though Memnoch is winning his war with God, he is tired and needs Lestat's help. He wants to tell Lestat the entire story and show him heaven and hell. He is confident that Lestat will be willing to join him when he knows the entire story. Memnoch grants Lestat 2 uninterrupted days to consider the proposition. He says,
I am not what men say I am. I am not an angel. I am not a devil. I am not God. I am Memnoch, and I have come for you, and you will hear my tale.
Lestat sends out a call for David and finds him with Armand, and Lestat tells the others everything, opening his mind to Armand. As they discuss the matter, Lestat reveals that he intends to seek Dora's advice. David becomes very angry over this revelation. Meanwhile, Lestat claims protection for Dora from all vampires. The following night, after Dora finishes her television program, Lestat grabs her in New Orleans and takes her to New York and the Olympic Tower. Once they are inside, Dora is more concerned about how Lestat's shivering than she is about the fact that she has just been flown halfway across the continent. He asks her about her uncle losing an eye, a piece of information that Dora can't comprehend that Lestat is even aware of. That is until he reveals it was the devil who told him. Dora asks for something to eat and drink, and Lestat immediately runs out to see to her request. On his return, he finds it amusing that he is a powerful immortal who has just run an errand at the request of a mortal girl. Dora thinks that the devil could force Lestat at his will at any time to do his bidding, but she doubts he would need to trick him to hell. Also, she tells Lestat she does not believe that God would allow anyone to be tricked into hell. He would have to choose that path himself. Therefore, Lestat should take Memnoch up on his bargain to learn the truth and visit both heaven and hell, since no one said that Lestat had to choose to help Memnoch. Just hear out what he has to say, and then make his own decision. Dora tells Lestat that should he need her, to call her, and she will send up prayers for him. Lestat tells Dora that it is not God that is dead, it is that people hate God. With that, Lestat leaves Dora at the Olympic Tower to spend more time looking over her inheritance, and goes to the steps of St. Patrick's Cathedral and calls to Memnoch, who arrives and begins the journey with Lestat. The journey begins in a whirlwind, which Lestat describes as being though the whirlwind were made of souls that surrounded them. Darkness drains from Memnoch's form, and he becomes light. Finally, he sees a man in front of the balustrade, and even Memnoch bows his head. The man is God. God greets Lestat by saying,
You would not be my adversary, would you, Lestat?
Then Memnoch takes Lestat back to Earth. Lestat is heartbroken. He wants to go back to heaven, and he cannot believe God would know his name. Lestat weeps and accuses Memnoch of thinking him a coward. Memnoch explains that he does not find him to be a fool nor a coward, and should Lestat join him by being his lieutenant, he can visit heaven any time he chooses. Memnoch also explains the reason that Lestat feels this way at this very moment is because when he met God, he was God incarnate, and God incarnate is a suffering God. Lestat becomes ashamed of his weeping and tells Memnoch that he has to know the whole story. Memnoch states that this is exactly what he was waiting for, and now they can begin. The two take a walk, and Memnoch remains in the lighter form he had shown when in heaven. Memnoch explains that God commanded he use the dark cloven-hooved persona when he is on earth. God cannot stand to see it in his gates, so there, Memnoch is allowed to walk in his true light form, but he admits he prefers the image of the ordinary man when he is dealing on earth. When Lestat questions him as to why he is being allowed to maintain his true form, Memnoch explains that at this moment they are not in time, so no one around them would be able to see or hear them, and that is why he is able to wear his lightened form. Memnoch explains to Lestat that the argument between God and himself is that God was created of energy, much like his own lighted form. However, once God created matter, time came into existence, and since God was not created of matter, the evolution on matter would not come back to create God. Memnoch tells the tale of how he came to the gates of heaven, and God tells Memnoch to go back to earth and behold all there is to know about humans, and then to come back once he has learned that they are part of nature. Then and only then would God call convocation. Memnoch knew he was being tested and that he needed to learn all he could about mankind. Memnoch explains that the Watchers, or guardian angels that fell to earth, are there to keep watch over it and know what it is that God wished them to see. He states that with the angels that descended, they went their separate ways and often convened, but he could not yet see as to how they were part of nature. The angels discovered that mankind was believing in God and making sacrifices to him, thinking that he was easy to please or displease. Memnoch continues describing the spiritual organization of things. Lestat is caught up on the tale, but he has one particular point of interest, which is Dora and Roger. For some reason, Lestat is unable to let go of the idea that Memnoch had something to do with Roger and Dora's appearance in his life. Lestat is aware that God died knowing he would return to heaven as such. God asks Lestat to watch his death, and Lestat is afraid. God tells Memnoch to guide Lestat through it. Lestat and Memnoch watch as God carries his cross through the procession. Time stops for a moment and God asks Lestat if he wants the blood that has run from him. Lestat refuses and God asks why his blood would be unworthy. Lestat drinks his blood and time begins again. Veronica then steps before God and wipes his face with her veil. She tells him that for 12 years she bled until she touched the hem of his robe and it was healed. God then took the veil from Veronica and gave it to Lestat. Lestat is transported to the fall of Constantinople and the slaughter that lies there. He is horrified, and Memnoch suggests several other options of brutal destruction of life in the name of God, which originated from the book. Lestat begs Memnoch to tell him of the battle between himself and God. Memnoch seems indifferent to the whole idea, and only comments he would not have started this life if the souls could have done it on their own. Memnoch grants Lestat a rest. Memnoch asks Lestat what he thinks hell is. Oddly, Memnoch asks Lestat what it would take for his soul to forgive Magnus for taking him from who he was to the blood-drinking monster that he sees himself to be. Lestat comments that he has forgiven Magnus, but that he would need forgiveness from his victims to know what would have happened had he not interfered as he did, what life he had denied them. They travel together to hell, and there is such wind that they cannot hear, and there are souls in human form fighting, and others heralding others to enter. Lestat describes it as a medieval Chinese castle. Everywhere there are men and women screaming, "I didn't know." Lestat sees Roger with Terry hanging onto him. Some souls are happy to see him and beg him to stay, while others argue among themselves, too taken up with what they are doing to notice him. Lestat panics in all the chaos and savagery. He declines Memnoch's offer and says he cannot stay there. He cannot take it. Memnoch chases him to the doorway to Earth and commands the other souls to give chase as Lestat carries Veronica's veil. Memnoch tries to stop Lestat's escape, calling him a coward, and tears out his left eye trying to stop him. As the other souls cry for Memnoch to squash the eye, Lestat escapes back to Earth. Lestat then finds himself back in New York. He runs through the streets screaming for Dora and finally sees St. Patrick's Cathedral with the Olympic Tower rising behind it. He rushes through the doors and finds Dora, Armand and David there all staring at him. He falls to his knees in front of Dora and takes what blood he can from her that will not cause her wounds. He insists that no one come near him and that he be left to sleep. When Dora asks if she may sleep next to him, he denies her, as he is afraid of what he may do. Meanwhile, Lestat learns that he has been gone from Earth for 3 days, and in that time, Roger's death has been discovered, Dora's television program has been cancelled, and David and Armand have assisted Dora in removing the relics to an orphanage in New Orleans. The next day, Lestat awakens to find fresh clothes laid out for him. He undressed carefully so as to not lose any bit of the travels left on the clothes. After bathing, he forces himself to stare at the ruin of his face with the missing eye. Finally, Lestat joins the others in the living room. Armand asks what happened to his eye, and Lestat tells them that gangsters popped it. It could have been saved. He tells Dora that he has seen her mother and that it will not be long before both parents are in heaven. He tells the others of the entire events as they played out from the beginning up to the point where he burst through the door to the Olympic Tower suite. Armand asks Lestat if he believed that this was the truth. Lestat finds himself irritated that Armand would go back to the argument if vampires serve the devil or God. David knows that Lestat has collected the clothes for scientific proof, if there can be any. Lestat begins ranting as to if he believed any of it or if it was all a trick. Armand's reaction to the veil is overwhelming, as he was one to suggest that the devil was not evil and that he'd take the devil up on his journey. As a result of his actions and guilt, he walks into the sun in the name of God and is destroyed as Lestat hears God's words come back to haunt him. Dora had taken the veil to the cathedral where she had it on display to much attraction. Lestat rages at the crowds that sit outside and sing praises, saying that Christianity is the most bloody of all faiths and that he could not bear witness to that. As she was now the custodian of the veil, she cut all ties to her former life. Dora is calling Lestat the messenger of God that has brought this relic to her. Lestat, on the other hand, is risking too much and is overwrought that he has been the one to breathe new life into the religion that Memnoch hated so much. He fears for what he has done. Lestat is so distraught that he brought back the veil so that David and Dora would believe him, instead causing such madness that people are flocking from all over the world to see it. David is so concerned for Lestat that he has packed all their belongings and asked Lestat to leave with him immediately. Lestat is both torn between whether he was a fool or not, but for whom? Memnoch? God? And in all the chaos, did he anger the other vampires by drawing this attention? David and Lestat leave for New Orleans and Lestat finds the chapel of the orphanage set up with the relics that Dora had received from her father. He wonders who had done this for him, and Louis steps out into the light. He asks Lestat to come home and be among his own belongings for comfort. Louis feels uncomfortable in the chapel as there are ghosts about, those of children singing. As they begin to leave, Lestat feels an ancient and sees that Maharet has come to see him. He tells her that he will not take an eye, that he will not take a life. As he raves back and forth, Maharet tells him that she is having him chained up for a while until he quiets down. She presents him with a package that was given to her for him. It contains his missing eye and a note from Memnoch thanking him for a job well done. Lestat is enraged and is locked away to keep himself from harm, and he accepts that he has lost Dora forever. David and Louis visit him, and eventually he is released to walk the earth again. So guys, would you like me to continue Lestat's story in part 4? Make sure to check out the first 2 videos of Lestat's life along with the other life stories from my Vampire Chronicles playlist. You can check it out by clicking the card on screen.